a lot of times people will ask, what would you do if you knew you would not fail, right? Because people are like, okay, so there's nothing to be afraid of. Oh, I would do this, this, and this. But I say, what would you do if you knew you had to fail in order to win? So my trainer at that time taught me, Tanji, you need to fail. Your muscles need to fail. If they don't, your muscles won't grow. If they do, your muscles will grow. Your shoulders will get more cap. Your back will get bigger. You see where we're going with this?
Yeah.
You have to fail. And so that's why I was excited to fail. So when I think about life, it's really helped me reframe
a mindset.
I'm not afraid to fail. I see it as a necessity. It's the path to winning. Because if I'm not failing, that means I'm probably not trying hard enough.
What if the hardest part of success is letting go of who you thought you had to be? Tanji Johnson was on a steady, structured path filled with purpose and the kind of direction most people strive for. But life had a different stage in mind. From her roots at the United States Air Force Academy to becoming an IFBB Pro fitness competitor and now a powerhouse motivational speaker, Tanji's story is one of transformation and perseverance. She didn't just pivot careers after crushing her goals along the way. She redefined her identity, stayed curious, and used failure as fuel to keep growing. This is a story you won't want to miss with my friend, Tanji Johnson, here on Navigating Now. Do it, lady, right? I love having conversations before we start just because it really relaxes the mood and gets everybody comfortable. But it's like we're just riffing back and forth. And you are such an amazing light in my life, Tanji. And thank you for being on here. Seriously. You have gone from being at the U.S. Air Force Academy, number one, and then moving into the fitness competitions and becoming an IFBB Pro, which is basically where we met as a strength coach myself. And then you've helped thousands of women find their voice. You've worked with so many different people, and now you've become a motivational speaker, and you speak on executive presence, but you've also given a TED Talk. And just like you have this great journey, and you've overcome so many failures and so many setbacks. Hence, that's what your main topic on your TED Talk was. And I just thought, man, I would love to interview you. And so thank you for being a part of this. Seriously.
I love it. Love it. Thanks for having me.
Can you tell people a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are, starting A, being born in Germany, and then B, getting to where you are and becoming a motivational speaker?
Sure. Well, I feel very blessed that I was born a military brat. So my dad was in the Army. He was enlisted in the Army. So I was born in Germany. And then he met my mom, and she's Korean. So he met her in Korea. So I've lived in Germany, in Korea, all before I was 4 years old. So that was great. And then when he finally came back to the States, we got stationed in a couple places like Louisiana. And then fortunately for me, he settled in South Carolina. When I say settled, it's tough when you're moving every 2 to 3 years. So the fact that he decided to plant himself at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, I was able to go to high school all in one place, which was really, really important.
Well, and it's rare, right? A lot of the, let's call them Army brats, don't have that opportunity because you pick up and move all the time. And so how lucky. But you're also not the only child. You had brothers and sisters. And so it's like, that was pretty cool that you were able to get those four. And then when you were in high school, that's kind of set you up to getting into the Air Force Academy as well. Can you kind of dive into that a little bit?
Sure. So I'm the second oldest out of five. There's five of us. I have an older brother, a younger brother, and then two sisters, and we're all 5 years apart. And, we're in South Carolina. I'm going to high school. I'm in ninth grade. And this is a very important story because I really feel like it anchored in my mindset that I had to be empowered and to be my own creator for the rest of my life. Because my dad was basically saying, going to college is important, thinking about what you want to do, how you want to make a living. Because we struggled quite a bit financially. I would say we were a lower middle income family. So we weren't like dirt poor, but, we definitely had a lot of limitations.
Well,
and
five kids is a lot,
right?
Five kids is a lot. That's a lot of meals to put on.
It's a lot of meals, a lot of clothes. I never got to wear the cool shoes or the designer outfits. But unfortunately, I went to a school where, a lot of my peers, they were from families that were doing really well. And a lot of them were business owners. So I remember my dad sitting me down saying, I know you're going to school with all these kids that are driving their own cars and their parents own businesses, and they probably have money put aside for them for college. And I just want to make sure right now in ninth grade that we do not. for any of you. And it was basically like, so
yeah.
I know you want to go to college, and respectfully, I'm giving you 4 years to figure it out. So do what it takes to earn a scholarship or like get an appointment to a military academy. And so I thought it was a bit unusual because for me, I was very fixated. I was thinking about that. I was creating that vision for where I wanted to be. I was thinking about that in ninth grade.
Sure.
And I was thinking about how am I going to get there? Who do I have to be so that in 4 years I become that cadet? Well, at the time, I knew I wanted to go into the Air Force Academy. So who do I have to become to be qualified and to get admission to a school that's going to be a full ride? Full ride. And not only that, but if I graduate, I'm going to have a job, like immediately.
Yeah.
Because, that's the thing. People go to college and they still spend several years
figuring
out, like, who are they going to be and what's that first job? Not everybody's job out of college is their ideal job that aligns with what they studied.
So you're growing up and you're around, your brother was a few years older than you were.
Yes.
And so that was somebody that you could look towards and see what his path was becoming in the academy. But at the same time, did some of your neighbors want to go into the Air Force too, or into the military branches? Or were you living on base, or was it in an area where it was just affluent families and you just happened to be a part of that community?
Prior to South Carolina, I had always lived on base. And I love that because, when I think about my personality and how easy it is for me to build relationships, get to know people, adapt to different environments, I definitely attribute that to my military upbringing. But by the time my dad retired, we bought a house in an affluent community. Our house wasn't, a big deal, but we ended up being in the right neighborhood, going to a great school. And so I would say no, I wasn't really surrounded by other people that had the same goals. They were really interested in partying and, staying in state and doing all the things. Not everybody, but I ended up, becoming a part of the junior ROTC program. So within that unit, I had other peers that wanted to serve in the military, and it just kind of depended on what level. Are they enlisting right away? Are they going to college?
Yeah. Were you kind of like self-driven and you were like, okay, if I want to get into, was it I guess a counselor that helped you get that? Like that you understood like, oh, if I can get into the ROTC program, then that will help me. Or was there a teacher, or was there another friend's parent that you could reach out? Because you had mentioned like asking people how they got there or whatever. Who were those people? Who were the people that you could reach out to, or mentors?
Well, I'm really fortunate to be able to say that I had a great role model. My role model was my oldest brother. So he was 4 years older than me. So whenever I was a freshman, so when my dad is having this conversation with me, my brother is a senior. And shortly after, he gets his appointment to the United States Air Force Academy. And so as I was building towards that over the next 4 years, I also got to watch him go. I mean, I wasn't there, but he would come home, but I would see his experience, and that was an inspiration to me. Everything about it, just how he was being challenged, the security of it all, just knowing where he was going. He wanted to be a pilot, so he knew I'm in the right place to have the best chance to get a pilot slot to build out the rest of my career. And I think that, the biggest role model for me also was really just the struggle. When people say, where did your ambition come from? I say, well, if you suffer enough or you struggle enough, it leaves clues.
Sure.
Struggle leaves clues. And the clues that left me was, I don't want to stress about money this much. I don't want to be so without. I remember feeling so gifted in gymnastics and with body movement, but we could not afford for me to take dance lessons or gymnastics training, none of that. It is amazing that I was able to become an IFBB Pro, and later in my 20s when I was making my own money, I learned and hired professionals to help me do that. And so I always joke with my mom, my dad's gone now, but I would always joke with my mom, like, do you know, I could have been in the Olympics in gymnastics, if
100%.
I had started the training that early on. So it left clues. I realized throughout this struggle that, what I do know is I don't want this. I want to be able to have more choices, more freedom, more empowerment. And so that was my ambition, to go create a life. And getting educated was one of the first steps for me.
Well, and it's funny. It's like a lot of people attribute like money to success, right? And sometimes money can only buy you that freedom or the options. And it's like when you don't have that, but you do have a set goal and you kind of have these options, and your mindset is saying like, I can look at it as a negative or I can look at it as a positive. And then these are the things that I'm learning. How do I best utilize that and catapult my career or my education? And because success can mean something different to all of us.
Exactly.
Right? And
exactly.
I think looking back and saying, wow, I want my kids right now to be like, a pro soccer player or pro cheerleader or something like that. But at the same time, it's like we don't know what their path is going to be. And it's scary because do we put her in those elite programs, in all of those special camps, or do we just let her go and just see what it is? And that's a challenging juggling thing that I'm doing. But it's neat that you can look back now and say, I could have done that, but you did become an Olympic athlete in the sense like you are a fitness pro, like you are a ninja and you're on stage and I've seen you on stage. And that's kind of how we met because you at the Arnold Classic or at the Mr. Olympia. And it's just this great community of people. And it's just, even if you don't lift and even if you're not like if you want to be a fitness competitor or anything, just at least to be able to experience that at least one time. There are so many amazing people in there. You can learn so much about health and nutrition and fitness. And it's just, you are always giving with your time. And I remember seeing you on stage and you actually, I'm going to compliment you, like a handstand walk is one of my little ninja tricks that I love.
Yes.
Well, you are a ninja yourself and you do those things. And it's like seeing you on stage, being able to do some of the gymnastic movements and the ballistic movements and choreographed and your
smile.
ability and smile, right? It's just amazing. Like it's almost like Cirque du Soleil up on stage and being able to do that and look perfectly fit, right? While smiling. It's amazing. So that's kind of how we met. And we have very many friends in the same community. And it's just, I've looked up to you for a long time and man, she has got it. And she is an Olympic athlete to me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. So, okay. So let's go back for a second. So you got into the ROTC program. You knew you wanted to go. You had a mentor, AKA your brother.
Right.
And you could see what mistakes he was making, what successes he was having. And so you could kind of formulate what you want to do. You didn't want to be a pilot.
You know
Or
what?
you
I
did
did
want it.
not.
Okay.
I have never, this is very interesting. So I've never had that passion to fly. And now I know why.
Okay.
Because I'm people driven. And
I
I'm
thought you were gonna say afraid of
relationally.
heights. I swear I thought that's what you were going to say.
It was just never a fascination, but I will say this.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where going back to this is why I think identity is so important, right? So when I was there, I also don't like being told no. So I love that your podcast is all about navigating no and how to deal with that because when I went into that environment, being a cadet, so if people aren't familiar, it's a very ambitious, competitive environment and culture, right? We are there because we were the best in our high schools, whatever, academically, well-rounded. And then we get to a place where you're amongst the best. It's like becoming a professional athlete, right? And so as I'm going through my journey as a cadet, I realized that I think we were getting 60 to 50% of all of the Air Force's pilot slots. And almost everybody I knew, they were diehard there to be a pilot. And it wasn't something that was my dream, but I remember feeling like I'm going to put being a pilot on a pedestal because that seems to be the culture here. And I'm 5'2.5". And you have to be 5'4" to fly in the Air Force. And so I wasn't even allowed to pursue pilot training.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, it's not like it was my dream, but I don't like being told no.
Sure.
And so, but I also like to do hard things. And so I found a way out. I decided that I wanted to become a Marine Corps aviator because in the Marines and in the Army, you only have to be 5'2". So I started to blaze a trail where I was going to be able to cross commission out of the Air Force into the Marine Corps to be a Marine Corps aviator, helicopter pilot.
Love that.
And so the point of this story is to say that I didn't want to be a pilot, but then I was driven by competition, right, and glory and ego to be a pilot. And so I was lucky enough that I met these WMs, which is Women Marines. And when I met them, I asked them, I said, so do you guys have kids? And it was like they laughed at me and gave me this look like, sweetheart, if you're going to be a Marine Corps aviator, like that will be your husband, right? Your aircraft will be your first child, and then you'll have a few others. But no, you're going to be they just painted this picture of it. It wasn't really an ideal option. And then that's when my true identity tapped in because I thought, I see what's happening here. Woo, I'm glad I found this out early. I was about to make a decision based on my culture, and I had gotten out of alignment with who I am and what I wanted. I
love that.
realized I'm actually a people person. I need to be on the ground with people, not up in the air. And I do want to have a family. And really, that's not something I'm willing to sacrifice. So I need to have an Air Force job where it won't be so difficult and so sacrificial to be a leader, an officer, and still be able to meet the man of my dreams, get married, and have a family.
Sure.
And so it's interesting that you asked that question, because I think to myself, wow, I didn't want to, but I almost did.
Yeah.
And then I pulled back and got back in alignment. And that's why that identity portion was so important for me.
Well, and not only did you figure it out, but you also figured out what you did not want to do, but you also figured out how to get to it, right? Like you were told no, and you're like, well, that's just not right now. How do I figure that out? What's the walk around to find in it?
Right.
And you found that path, but then luckily you had these conversations, and you were like, ooh. And I think I would want people to hear that, because it is so important. Before you spend all the money going to college, before you choose your degree, ask someone who's in that field what they think about it.
Right.
Like what is the best part? What's the hardest part? Because they might reveal something that's a nugget that you're like, that does not sound like something I want to do.
Right.
And
right.
the same thing happened with me. I want to be an anesthesiologist. And so I interviewed an anesthesiologist, a friend of mine, his dad was. And after our conversation, I was like, I do not want to do that. That is not going to be for me. And it saved me time and money and everything. And I was just like, wow. But it was only because I asked. And so why not set yourself up for success and ask people about that job before you even get into it? So it sounds like that's exactly what you did.
Right.
Okay.
And just being aware that sometimes you make decisions, you have to look at your decisions and ask yourself, is this intrinsically driven or externally driven? Like what are the outside sources that are influencing you? And it's one thing to have a role model. Like my husband is a chiropractor. He's third generation. So his father and his father's father were always role models that influenced his passion to be able to serve in that way. But he's got 3 boys now. And what if one of them wants to be a chiropractor? We would really have to dig in to make sure, do you align with this passion, or do you feel like you have to carry on the legacy of the family? And are you feeling pressure?
Yeah.
It's our job to really walk them through that and help them get into alignment, even know what that looks like.
But that's so important, because that's just a great parent.
Right.
That's a great leader. Someone who can look at somebody coming up along the ranks or a child and say, is this what you really want to do? Or do you want to just put yourself in the shoes of our business or something? Because I have many clients over the past that have wanted to pass down their business to their kids, but then they have that conversation and they find out that the child doesn't want to do that. And it's not fair to force them to do something, because they could ruin the business. So if it's not what they're interested, but you have to have that conversation. That's that communication. That's so important.
Right.
So you didn't want to become a helicopter pilot. Do you have a favorite helicopter? Let me ask that really quick.
Oh no, I mean the Chinook maybe. But...
Chinook, okay.
Did you know that?
Yeah, I love Hueys. Like the sound of a Huey. There is a Huey that I don't know if it's the National Guard that has one over in Liberty Lake, but it comes over all the time, and it goes over Liberty Lake, and you hear boom, 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 and it's just such a unique sound. And that's my love for that. But the Huey was just fantastic.
And see, this is reinforcing how I discovered, like, this is not what I want. I was in love with the idea of the image of being a pilot. But I feel like if I was a true fan, like my brother probably would have told you all the different aircrafts because he was fascinated by aircraft, right? And I was never fascinated by any piece of technology, especially, in transportation. It was always people.
But so you know that your passion is people driven. Yes. And were you always a teacher? Like, did you always find yourself like as a leader or a teacher, or is that something that the Air Force Academy kind of taught you and you're like, I've kind of found maybe a great skill set that I'm really actually good at?
I think that it evolved, and I think that honestly the fitness industry was when I realized that was a skill set of mine. Because at the academy, I discovered that I was great at visually learning. So, for example, when I was there, not only was I a cheerleader, but I was on this organization called the Cadet Honor Guard. So we're the drill and ceremonies team. We're the ones that do the funeral detail. We do the retreat and reveille where we pull up the flag and bring down the flag. And we're that, I don't know if you've ever seen it, exhibition drill team where there's 24 in a formation. We're perfectly in precision, and we do the drill and ceremonies with the rifle. So we're spinning the rifle, and I don't know if you've ever seen any of that before, right? So I was on that team, and I was very precise, and I was able to pick up, whatever choreography they put out. I was able to learn that very easily because I've always been attention to detail in the way that I learn. But I don't think I discovered that I was a teacher until the fitness industry.
Okay. So you're in the military, you're coming out, what is your transition from, let's say, military career and being a leader within the military to all of a sudden the fitness competitions and becoming a fitness IFBB Pro? Because that's a huge change of worlds, right? And so obviously you had a background of cheerleading and sports, but like there's like a little bit of a difference there. Like I looked up to Arnold all the time, but I didn't want to be a professional bodybuilder, right? And so, but I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. What was the catalyst for you to get into the fitness competitions?
So in my Air Force career, and ironically, because we're here in Spokane, I was stationed here at Fairchild Air Force Base. So I was an aircraft maintenance officer. And what that means is my job as an officer, I would actually switch different departments, but like I might be the officer in charge of the flight line, or the officer in charge of all the guys that do fuels, or in charge of avionics or plans and scheduling. But that was my department, was aircraft maintenance. So I was leading people and rotating almost every 6 months to a year to a different department. That's what they do with the lieutenants, is they make sure we get experience leading and managing all the different compartments of the Air Force and what we're doing on the flight line and stuff. And so I was doing that. But because I cheered at the Air Force Academy, I got into weight training. And so in the early years of my lieutenant career, I started competing in bodybuilding shows and fitness competitions.
On the side.
It was a big side gig because I was sponsored by Air Force Sports. It was becoming a thing. And then in 2001, I go to Atlanta and I win the Nationals. The whole thing. My first time ever, right?
Sure.
Now, this doesn't mean it was like my second competition. I had done plenty of competitions.
Yeah.
It was just my first national competition. And it was completely unexpected. One of my best advice for athletes is to stay humble, because it was such a great experience for me. I trained to win. I didn't expect to win. And it was so humbling when I came out on top. And so I go back and I become a professional, fitness competitor.
Yeah.
And I realized that this new passion was driven to me. And it was, so think about me being able to be a leader in the military.
Yeah.
But
are you based in Spokane at that time?
I'm based in Spokane.
Okay.
And I knew that I could be a leader in the fitness industry as well. I wasn't quite sure what that was going to look like.
Monetarily, or just like passion driven at post military? Like you had no idea. It was something you were interested in.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I knew that I was wanting to start coaching because I remember fantasizing about my next assignment, thinking, gosh, if I could just get an assignment to go back to the athletic department at the Air Force Academy, I want to coach the cheerleading program. I want to coach.
Okay.
So I think that my passion for fitness was now really starting to raise, and it wasn't something I knew existed before. It developed, right? It started with me weight training, and then all the benefits I got from that sport and from weight training, it just started to grow where I realized, wow, I think I want to move in this direction. I can keep all the strengths about who I am and move in this direction. And it was funny because I've heard you mention Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So when I tell my family I'm going to pursue a career in the fitness industry, it's like what?
Yeah.
Because they were so content and happy that I was in the government and that I was secure and that, you can see your path pretty easily, right? So
you have a set goal. And
exactly.
I think that's interesting that you mentioned. I want to push the brakes on that really quick because especially kids, as soon as you get done with high school, you kind of know your path. Okay, for those 12 years in school, you know what you're going to do. And then maybe you go to college, then you have another 4 or 5 years. Right. Everything's set, but then as soon as you're done, you're like, now what? There's nobody out there to help you. Like, this is what you need to do to get this job. And it's like the military is that because you can move up the ranks. You know how long to get your 20 years in or post-war. It's like it is very formal. Right. And you know that. And so that structure helps a lot of people and it works with a lot of people.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So you saw that structure and you were going back and forth.
Oh, I just could not. It's like, think of Vanna White, right? There's curtain number 1, curtain number 2, curtain number 3, and I'm definitely like, I don't do well with FOMO. So I love opportunity, and it takes a lot of confidence to move forward and to take a risk and to do something new when you don't see that structure. I had no idea. I didn't even know what it meant to be a professional fitness competitor in the IFBB. I didn't know what that looked like. I just knew that I now had the opportunity, and I knew that my heart and my passion was into it, and I was going to figure it out. And that's exactly what happened.
So, well, and I mean, a lot of people go a lifetime without getting their pro card.
Sure.
Right. And to me, when I would see an IFBB Pro person, it was like, they're the ones on Muscle and Fitness. They're on Women's Fitness. They're the cover magazine model or actor that's on there. And it's like, that is, in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's what it means to be that. And then to obviously place or something like that in some of the major international competitions. And so you're looking at that and you see that. Who did you align yourself with to become that? Because you can go work out all day long and not really know anything other than how to do well when you're working out, what your nutrients are, what your macros. It's like there's so much involved in that, and it's almost like you didn't have a mentor other than your brother to get to where you were. Who did you align yourself with that wasn't spewing X, Y, and Z? You got to take this. If you pay me a lot of money, I'll work your diet. It's like there's so much fluff out there.
Sure.
And it's like, who did you align yourself with that you're like, I need to, if I really want to pursue this, who did you align yourself with?
Okay, so I'll be honest. So initially,
it was not me. It was not me. I'm not that good. Okay.
No, I don't get asked that a lot, but now that I think about it, so to be honest, there wasn't a person that I can think of having in mind, but here's what was this culture of women that made me feel okay being me. Because here's what was happening as I was putting on muscle. So I'm at the Air Force Academy and I'm lifting weights for the first time. I'm in the cheer program, happy with my body, happy with my sport and athleticism. And then fast forward 2 to 3 years, now I got more muscle. And this was right around the time, I think Janet Jackson, I don't even think she had gotten popular yet. You remember when she came out and she was super fit, the abs, all the thing? I don't remember what year it was, but there was definitely a time where being fit, including being a woman that had muscle, became popular. It wasn't while I was doing it. It wasn't 25 years ago. And so I remember starting to feel self-conscious as my body was changing. My body was changing because of the sport I was in and because of how I was falling in love with weight training. And then there was this battle between my femininity and me being proud of developing strength, right? And changing my body composition. But then when I discovered the bodybuilding world, so when I did my first competition, see, prior to that, I would tell myself lies and I would say things like, you're not as feminine anymore. Now you're getting masculine and da-da-da-da-da. And then I would go to a bodybuilding competition and I would see women that had bodies just like mine, but I looked at them differently. Now I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, well, I think she's hot. I think she's beautiful. Wow, she looks great. She's super feminine. And that's when I realized, oh, I only feel that way when I'm in an environment where I'm unique, right? So when I was on the cheer team, I was the buffest girl on our team, right? Yeah. And I think that happens to a lot of people. You could have this amazing uniqueness and you don't even appreciate it because you're too busy feeling isolated.
And trying to fit in with the other people, the majority.
So then I'm at a bodybuilding show and I'm like, everybody looks like me and, I actually feel like I belong here. So I think it was more the belonging that I needed to just kind of just reset my esteem because I knew that what I was doing was good. I was like, this is something good, like being strong, getting fit, transforming my body. This is really good. And I want to change how I feel about myself. And a lot of it was the environment.
Well, and the environment is what makes us stronger. And that's where I got my drive and my inspiration because
In martial arts, yeah.
Well, my martial arts instructor was also, I mean, the guy was benching 405 and he was like 55 or 60 at the time. I was like, oh my gosh, right? So it was like, I wanted to be like that. But when I walked into the gym and I went to Gold's Gym or something like that, and I worked at Gold's, I would align myself around other trainers.
Right.
And I would pick their brains. And I was learning from everybody. And I enjoyed I almost want to say like going back and forth and like, okay, Tanji, you're going to do, show me your tricep workout. And then you would destroy my tris. And then the next week I'd be like, well, I'm going to give you a bicep workout. And you would go 1 for 1 or something like that. And that's how I learned. And it was like, I learned what worked for me and what didn't work for me. And then I could share that and pass that on. But like you, I didn't have someone that I was like, oh, that's the person I'm going to hire. That's the strength coach I'm going to hire. That's the personal trainer that I'm going to hire. I learned from other people within the gym.
Yeah.
And it was so, I felt like I belonged at the gym, and I felt like, for the first time in like my physical fitness outside of the martial arts, it was like, this is really fun and it's really cool. And I enjoyed it and I looked forward to going every day.
Right.
So,
and that's why I knew it was going to be my new community because, you know, in the military, it doesn't matter which service you're in, but if you have served, like when military people meet other military people, and then you find out, oh, you're a veteran? Oh, you served? There's just that commonality, and there's this understanding that we know that at a point in our lives, we chose to put a mission above our own selves. Yeah. Okay, I'll give you an example. So I was just at the Air Force Academy, and I'm speaking with my an old classmate of mine who was 1 year ahead of me. He is now the commandant of cadets, which means he's the general in charge of all the cadets. I'm so proud of him. So I'm sitting in his office because I just wanted like 15 minutes of his time. And I was kind of curious. We're not going to talk politics right now, but I was curious from him. I said, with everything that's going on, because this was just a couple weeks after Charlie Kirk got assassinated, I said, how is the culture right now at the academy? I was just curious, is it 50-50, you know, on different sides? You know, and I was like, how are you doing? How do you feel? And I'll remember him saying, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because my job, my role it has like his opinion does not impact the role. Like his job as leader to fulfill the mission of what he's supposed to do for his cadets, his opinion on whatever political views, it doesn't matter. And I remember looking at him like, wow, that is why you are in great service to the military, because you're able to do that, and not everybody can. Not everybody can take an oath to serve beyond what
unbiased.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I think you're right. I think that there needs to be so much more of that, and that's why it's like religion outside of politics, and it's like, or of our school system, and it's like, it's so, can you do your job unbiased? Can you do your job and not try to influence somebody else? Can you do your job and not let it seep in some way or other within education? Right. And it's like, if you can, you're doing that service to whatever it is your role. And that is difficult. 100%.
Exactly.
So you went back to Colorado and you actually had a podcast there. Correct, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so tell me about that. Like, you were actually able to go back to your old stomping grounds and kind of share your story. So how did that go?
I loved it. It had been about 16 years since I've been there. So there's been a lot of change. You know, one of the things that I thought was fascinating is you experience something. And if it worked out for you, it's easy to think, so don't fix what's not broken. You know, I turned out okay. I think this way about parenting too, right?
I was totally going there. In my mind, I was like, oh man, because oh my gosh. Like, we used to sleep on our stomachs versus up on top because of what I lived, right?
Yeah. Well, you just met two of my stepsons, right? So, oh my goodness. You know, their mom is about 10 years younger than me. So we come from different generations, but I was raised with a very authoritarian, you know, type of parenting. And, you know, with a military dad and a very critical mom, you know, it was very strict. Not a lot of relationship building, understanding, back and forth communication. It was like, do what you're told.
Sound like my
yes,
dad.
ma'am. Yes, sir. All of that, right? Which groomed me great for the military. And then I go into the military, and at the time, 20 years ago, Leadership was still very much so like that. And now,
Sure.
as you know, we're living in a society where we want to empower not just our kids, but people in general to think more, have more critical thinking, to make choices, to really be curious and ask questions. And now, so I was able to discover that a lot of the things we were doing back when I was there, they don't even allow any of that, like the hazing and you know, some of the stuff. You know, I would look back and say, oh, some of that behavior and leadership was to make us tougher and stronger. But then somebody else could argue, but is it necessary? Is there another way we can achieve that without borderlining on verbal and physical abuse, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought that was very fascinating. So I'm just happy to see that it's evolving and that we are paying better attention and not just getting comfortable doing what we've done for the past, right?
Well, and I think you're hitting on a point where it's like not all of us learn the same way.
Right.
And we communicate differently. And like I've had, every one of us is going to have a different love language, right? And so what works for me, if you yell at me at the gym and you're like, give me 50 push-ups, or my instructor said, give me 5, I would just, okay, that inspired me. The yelling inspires me, right? But that doesn't work for George over here.
Oh
George
my
wants
gosh.
to be like, can you do the 50 on your knees and then do 25 more? Like we all are different. And it's
So
neat
true.
that you can understand that not everybody's going to be taught the same way or learn the same way. But, and that, I guess that's a good transformation.
In fact, I was just telling the story the other day that I chose my first marathon to be the Marine Corps Marathon back in Virginia because I envisioned these Marines yelling at me in mile 24, 25. You know, if there was any weakness in me, I pictured them yelling at me because I related that back to when I was a cadet. So I am the type of person where you could yell at me and I would go straight into this. It would take me back to a place where I would realize what's going on. I would get tough. I would, like my resilience, you know, key would come and unlock, and it would trigger me like, it's time to suffer. I'm going to be okay. I can do hard things. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it's like when you have someone who knows that's how you like to be inspired, they know your currency.
Right.
They know how to bring that out of you, right? But a great leader, and especially now, it's like if you know how different people can, you can speak differently to other people. And whether that's at the gym or at work or something like that, a friend of mine, he was my foreman, and the way that he would shame me wasn't publicly. He would take me to the side and say, "You messed up. What would you do differently? And here's what I would have done differently. But you're not the only person to make that mistake because I've done it too."
Yeah.
That worked for me.
Yeah.
That kind. But then he was an hour later, he's yelling at somebody, "Hey, you idiot, like, what are you
And
doing?"
you're like-
But it worked for them, right? But that's not my love language.
Because we had already been trained, or some people might say groomed for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But to know that, and how important is it to be able to express to people, like, listen, especially like to your husband, when I'm on stage, I want to hear you yell, "Go, girl," like that, because that inspires me. I tell my daughter Hayden, I'm like, "Go, kid."
Yeah.
And she hears "kid" and she just knows that's from me.
Yeah.
And that's what inspires. And I'll yell it and everybody's like, "Is it embarrassing?" No, but it works for her.
Yes.
Right. And so that's what drives her. And when she's running cross country or something like that,
That's
"Go,
her
kid."
power signal.
Yeah, it is.
I love
exactly.
that.
It's her power signal, her trigger. And so you found that. Was that a hard thing for you to be able to teach other people, like as a coach? Is that something that you translated from, because you've gone from uniform to uniform, right? And so it's like when you're teaching your students or your ladies that are doing the fitness competitions, like what is it that you find how to communicate with them? What works best for them?
So for me, I'm not sure if I was necessarily teaching it to them, but I was learning it myself as a new coach. Because what happens is you have this way of doing things, and it's great until it doesn't work, until you offend somebody, or you make someone feel left out, or somebody feels like you're doing favoritism. Once you fail, right, and make mistakes, it leaves clues. And so then you get curious, and that's why I love the work that you're doing, because it's so important for us to think about the mistakes we make, and when we fail, to just look at it as feedback. So this was working with Susie over here, but when I coached so-and-so, it didn't work. And my ultimate goal is to be effective.
Yeah,
so
to make it work for everybody.
To change. I'm willing to change, because it's not about being right or wrong or comfortable with this old coaching style. It's I want to get through to every client. So if I got to be 8 different people, to be able to be effective, then I will learn various leadership styles and know which ones to activate when it's right.
Absolutely golden. And obviously you did that from your leadership within the military, but then also as a fitness competitor. So let's go back just for a second, because your story is amazing, but you're going back and forth. Do I want to take this full time? What do I want to do? Right. What is that like?
When it was time to make that decision? Yes. So I remember just feeling like I had to follow my heart. And my heart, the passion in my heart was leading me to the fitness industry, even though I didn't know what that was going to look like. Mm-hmm. And I remember the call to bravery and to courage, because I was walking away from something that was already established, that was secure. But I also felt like there was that excitement. I've always been that person that I'm very driven to explore. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I made that decision because it's okay if it didn't work out. I knew that I didn't want to regret that I didn't take the avenue to find out.
And to try.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay, so you took the plunge, you went it, and you were successful. Like you're on the cover of Muscle and Fitness, on Women's Fitness. You are the epitome of like what people aspire to be like. You hit it out of the park. You became the Olympic athlete of the fitness competition, right? And so along this way, you're making all these connections. You're working on like helping others find their voice, leadership roles. You're transferring one uniform to the next and now onto a next. When did you realize that you had a gift to be a motivational speaker?
Wow. Well, let me just start with where it started.
Okay.
And because I don't know if at this time I thought it was a gift. I just started doing it. And so my first, I'm going to keep going backwards. It just keeps... So at the Air Force Academy, we get to serve in different leadership roles based on what year you're in. So when you're a freshman, you're like a follower, mm-hmm. right? You're there to just all your identity gets stripped away and you become a part of a team because you need to know how to follow. Sure. So then when you're a sophomore, you become a trainer and you train those young followers to be followers. And then when you're a junior, you become the supervisor. When you're a senior, you become the leader. So when I was a junior, in the summertime, we get to apply for different leadership positions, and I earned the position of group superintendent. So I was the highest ranking junior that was going to be running the class of 99 through basic training. Mm-hmm. And it was out in Jacks Valley, out on an amphitheater. And so part of my job was every night I gave a speech on stage to 1,000 cadets that were, in basic training. Yeah. And I'm talking, beret, my shirt's on tight, and right? So you can either say that's when I became a speaker or an actor, because it was all serious Tanji at that point. So I would get out on that stage and I would think about like, okay, I went out in the field today and I watched how everybody performed, how they did on the obstacle course, how they did on the assault course. I'm looking at behavior and I'm thinking about our whole goal is we got to get these kids tough enough and ready to go into the school year and really start that 4-year process of becoming a future leader for the American military.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And so I'd give these speeches. So, from curating clarity and messages and ideas, I was giving these speeches, but I laugh because my funniest moment when I think about that role is I had, my mic on my lapel. Mm-hmm. And I gave this amazing, hardcore, stern speech. And my mic was still hot. I walk off the stage. My other cadre, my peers mm-hmm. that were back there. And I don't want to cuss, but I said the SHIT word. Shoot, I forgot what else I wanted to say. And it was, my mic was hot. So the entire audience heard me. So they went from, and so later when I get feedback, they were like, oh, that's just when we knew you were human. We still were scared, but we knew you were human. Yeah. So that was really pivotal because I got comfortable speaking in front of large groups of people. Mm-hmm. And then when I was a lieutenant, as I was telling you, I was a recruiter, so I would go into different inner city schools. And I think it also helps to be able to practice speaking in front of really tough crowds. Not people that are like, we paid to see you and we can't wait to hear what you want to say, but more like, who are you and why are you taking up my lunchtime? And the whole student body has to be here to listen to you talk about the military, right? So that's where it started. But I would say, honestly, when I was coaching, I would curate these camps where I would bring all 40 to 50 women on my team together, mm-hmm. and I would have different special guests. But I was always giving some type of, I don't want to say speech, but maybe a talk, mm-hmm. whether it was about vulnerability or about connection or about courage or about comparison. And when I knew that I had a gift for it was when I was getting the feedback that my message or my words really helped transform people. And that's when I knew. And so that was happening while I was still competing.
Yeah.
And so then I got a couple of keynote talks, as an athlete. And it wasn't until I was retiring from that 16, 20-year athletic career that I realized when you're trying to, I don't want to say reinvent, but when you're looking at where am I going next, I just thought, why don't I pick something that I already know I'm good at, that I've already been doing? I'm just going to go do it professionally now.
Oh, I love that, because you're taking a leap of faith, but at the same time, you're kind of staying within a skill set or something that you have been good at, and you're just like transforming it just a little bit, right? And so it's not a brand new shirt that you're going to wear, but at the same time, it's like you know how to do it and you have some skill set, but you're still getting into something that's new. And I'm sure that was terrifying at the same time. But I have to ask this, like, you had a successul career. You were at the top of the line. You were.
Are you talking about fitness?
Fitness,
okay.
Right? So you're all of a sudden, it's like you are a champion competitor. You are on all of those magazines. You have your own business. You have your own competition, right? Like your name is a brand. Why is it that everything was working for you? Did you just want more, or did you want something else?
Here's what I realized. I stopped growing. Now, I know everyone may not have an appetite for that, but I've definitely learned that I have an appetite to grow. And when you think of like what makes you happy, I was actually listening to Brendan Burchard, and he was talking about being able to define happiness. For some people, it's a feeling, or they can, and then he says, define it and be able to pinpoint what you were doing when you had those moments of happiness. So was it in the middle of an achievement? Was it in the middle of connecting with a loved one, like, your future spouse or someone? And I remember when I was listening to that, I realized, wow, I do get a lot of fulfillment when I'm growing, when I go through these seasons of growth. And with fitness, like you said, I was judging, promoting, competing. We'll talk about the physical part of competing, because there is a thing where you hit your peak and then you start to go down. And that's super not fun, right? So let's say for me, I'm competing at a physical level, I'm building muscle, I'm doing gymnastics on hard stages, which is not ideal, but we do it. It's not ideal. It's not good for the body. It's very damaging to the joints. And so after about
versus
16,
having a mat that kind of bounces
like the way
a little
gymnasts
bit.
do, right? So here we are. Everything about what a professional fitness competitor does is very extraordinary, because we're on these super strict diets where we get very low body fat, like very low body fat, but yet we go out on a stage that's not protected. It's a hard stage floor, and we're doing acrobatics and plyometric push-ups and handstands and all the things. And we have a high injury rate in our sport because of that. And so my body has gotten beat up over 16, 17 years. And then towards, in my 40s, I'm realizing, man, I'm losing a little bit of mobility, losing a little bit of flexibility. Now my lower back is starting to hurt because, you look at Ronnie Coleman, there's a reason I love Ronnie. You look at where he's at, but he lifted really heavy for a really long time. There's a cost.
Yeah.
When I think about that, that is why I don't run marathons anymore, because there's a cost for me at my weight and my muscle to be able to run 26 miles if I did that over and over and over again on top of what I've already done to my body. So that's when I had to realize, well, if I want to be around in my 70s playing pickleball with these boys, maybe I don't need to run marathons. Maybe I could just run 3 miles or do something different. So there's the physical component of bodies getting burnt out. And I'm beyond my peak, right?
You look great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's the physical portion. But then for me personally, I realized I just felt like I had made it, and I wasn't learning anything new. I was the person for posing.
In your
I was
field.
the pioneer for teaching posing in the Pacific Northwest. I loved it, but I was bored. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
I loved it, but I was getting bored. And I was also starting to feel like my impact has been limited. Now, my impact has been great, because when you think of the big bodybuilding industry, the thousands of women, but there was a part of me that thought, men,
100%.
right? But just in the fitness community and the bodybuilding. And I thought, there's this whole other world out here of people outside of my little world that I could take my same strengths and challenges and go impact those people. Now, there's going to be a growth process because that means I'm going to be shifting, pivoting, new audience, new way of doing things. And then that fascinated me. And I knew it was time to change because I got excited thinking about it.
Well, and how special that you're able to look back and say, okay, I was at my peak and I was able to do that, but the opportunity cost could be this, or the impact could be this. And Ronnie, unfortunately, but he was interviewed and he said,
I don't think he would have changed it.
Yeah, and that's what he said. He goes,
Yes.
I wouldn't change it.
Yes.
Even though I have to walk the way that I do. I've had so many back surgeries. It's like, I would not change it. But that's what was most important to him, right? And so now you're at this crossroads where you're like, this is more important. I can make more of an impact and I can continue growing and learning, because I think that when we become stale, it's like we're going to sink and die like the shark, right?
Right.
And it's like, you got to keep moving. And how inspirational to ourselves to be able to find something that does inspire you to keep moving, that happiness. Like, what makes us happy? What is it? Is it going to be job? Is it going to be more money? Is it going to be a new skill set that you do, or an achievement? And so you're finding this and you're getting into it. And it's not that big of a change for you because you've done it for a long time, but you were the top of your expert field. And now all of a sudden you give a TED Talk. And that TED Talk is about how the failures helped get you to be who you are, to reach the success that you have. And your whole analogy is based off in the gym.
Yes.
And it's how when we go into the gym to break down our muscles, we're going to complete failure, basically, right?
That's the goal.
That is the goal. and how often can you say that? Like, your job is to fail. And if you fail, then you're going to grow, right? And so you came up with this idea for your TED Talk, which is a huge amount of views. Like, how scary was that? Was that something that as soon as you prepping for it, it was difficult, or as soon as you were done, you were like, I think I can do this. I can do this professionally.
So are you talking about the TED Talk?
The TED Talk.
Okay. A lot of times when I do talks, I don't get too nervous and I'm not scared if I'm prepared. Does that make sense?
No, I've taught people how to speak publicly, and it's like, if you know the material, it's not scary. It's like you and I talking about our kids.
Right.
It's like I could talk about my kids for 48 hours, like nonstop.
Right.
But if I don't know the information or the content, I'm right? But it's being prepared. It's really not looking out in the audience and seeing someone naked and saying I'm okay. It's more about whether or not you know the information.
Right. And I love when you think about, so talking about failure, going back to the exercise analogy, it was so powerful to me because when I learned that as an athlete, and I in the talk, I tell the story about my first weight training session with Brad Hollabaugh, who is actually from Spokane. And he took me through this workout, and I had always lifted well, but I'd never lifted to failure. And so he had me doing push presses, and, I thought I was done after 15 reps, tried to put my arms down, and he just kept forcing my arms up. And I did not understand what was happening. At some point, he was doing 90% of the lifting, and I was just going with the flow. And then when he finally stopped, I literally, my shoulders floated because that's how burnt they were.
Yeah.
And then he looks at me and says, if you want to win, you're going to have to learn to fail. And I thought, oh, okay. So first I needed time to now get over being scared of the pain, because he put me through a lot of pain. So I went through the pain. And then after a couple of weeks of that, you develop this resilience to pain where you're like, I'm going to be in pain, but it won't last forever. And I already know I can do it because I've done it before. I did it for a week. I did it for 2 weeks. That's why it's so important to be able to push through.
But you did that in the military too. Like, let's run a 5 mile. Let's run a marathon. It's like, that you can make it through it. It might hurt a lot, and you might get some blisters, but you were already being given that experience.
Yes.
When you were younger.
I think of that, the meme with the Asian guy that says, but did you die? That is what I think about. If I'm doing anything hard and I start to second guess myself, that meme comes to me and it makes me laugh. And it's like, no, I'm probably not going to die. I'm not going to die. So I can get through this. But when I went through that weight training session, and then something miraculous happened. After I got used to the pain and I got over the fear of the pain, then I got excited to come into the gym for that very reason, to fail. And it wasn't even a good workout unless I achieved that. And so when you think about business, a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we have to be very self-driven to get things done. And a lot of times the advice we're giving is you've got to raise the necessity. Sometimes you have to create it. And so in this situation with training to failure became the necessity. So one of my favorite questions to people is, a lot of times people will ask, what would you do if you knew you would not fail, right? Because people are like, okay, so there's nothing to be afraid of. Oh, I would do this, this, and this. But I say, what would you do if you knew you had to fail in order to win? So my trainer at that time taught me, Tanji, you need to fail. Your muscles need to fail. If they don't, your muscles won't grow. If they do, your muscles will grow. Your shoulders will get more cap. Your back will get bigger. You see where we're going with this?
Yeah.
You have to fail. And so that's why I was excited to fail. So when I think about life, it's really helped me reframe
a mindset.
I'm not afraid to fail. I see it as a necessity. It's the path to winning. Because if I'm not failing, that means I'm probably not trying hard enough. So let's go to when I apply for the TED Talks, right? So the first thing is, there's a lot of talks out there. There's a lot of people who have done it. And what I found out, there's a lot of people applying. A lot of people applying. So then there's that first, we all get it. Okay, so I'm going to apply. What if I apply to, 20, 30 talks and they all say no, right? And so what you teach, that redirection, well, take it for feedback. I remember applying to, I think, Cal State or Berkeley. Berkeley had a TED Talk. And I'm filling out the application, going through the questions. And then I get to one and I'm like, gosh, they got me. Because they're asking me for the scientific research that backs up my message or my talk or my theory. And I'm thinking, I don't have one. This is just my personal experience. What did I learn from that? I went ahead and finished the application, turned it in. And I knew I wasn't going to get it because I knew that I didn't have what they were looking for.
Sure.
But that process taught me. So the next application I did, do you think I had scientific research? Do you think I went and found it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But that takes motivation on yourself, self-motivation, right? And it's like, that's something that you've learned along the way too.
Right.
I just, we had Laura Penny, who is the CEO of Coeur d'Alene Casino and Resort, and she was like, she tried to get the CEO position and she wasn't getting it, and she didn't get the second time. And then she finally went up and asked, why? And they go, well, you don't have an MBA. And she goes, yeah, but I have all of this experience. And she goes, but they said, everybody else has that experience too, but you don't have the MBA. And so what did she do? She didn't quit. She went and got an MBA, even though it was so hard and difficult, right? And so it sounds the exact same thing that you experienced. So you went and you got the information.
Right.
Okay. And then you gave this TED Talk about failure, and it was great, and I loved it. I would advise everybody to watch it, because not only as a personal trainer, it just hit home, but it's all about the failure, because the failures do help us grow. They help us make us who we are.
Right.
And we aren't who we are without all of those failures. But to be able to change that mindset.
Well, and you say mindset. So that's so important, because when I think about the earlier years of competing, and by the way, do you know what today is? Today
is the Mariners' Day?
No, today happens to be the Friday. So that means that my alma mater, Fitness Olympia, is happening tonight in Las Vegas right now. This is the Olympia weekend.
Okay.
All right. So that just gave me goosebumps that we're talking about the Olympia, and it's going on. So when I think about my earlier years doing my routines, I would show up for the warm-ups. And I would look around, and there's girls doing high-level gymnastics, and I'm not doing that.
Well, because just for the audience to know, behind the curtains in the other rooms, you're warming up, you're getting your muscles all in shape and rounded, and you're trying to get vascular, and it's like you're warming up. So when you do go on stage, you're ready. So there's a whole lot of going on behind the audience scene,
and you're seeing the showcase of everybody's strengths at the same time, practically, because we're all trying to warm up and get our best tumbling pass. And it's kind of a show, like a little mini show-off session. And I just remember at that time, I didn't have mindset mastery, and I would just get overwhelmed with self-doubt. Like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? I'm not as good as these girls, and blah, blah, blah. And I never did well. In the beginning, I didn't do well, not because I didn't prepare well or I didn't have a great routine, but the mindset I had stepping out on stage, I had already failed in my mind. I already knew I wasn't good enough, right? Yeah. And so it wasn't until midway through my career, as I continued to train athletically and for my physique, I really started working on training my mind. And as my mind got stronger, see, when your body fails, your mind prevails, right? And so that's when I really started to see the difference in my performance. It was always tied to where was my mindset right before. And so in my TED Talk, I talk about one of my biggest failures on stage in front of everybody, and that's me trying to do a new handstand. So Blue, you do handstands too. I just
Not as good
learned
as
how
you.
to do them 10 years ago. Because for me, I didn't remember I told you I didn't have gymnastics training when I was growing up. And so for the first 10 years of my career, the excuse I made was because I didn't get put into gymnastics when I was 6 or 7 years old, because I don't have 10 years experience like most of my peers do because they did it in college or they did it in high school, that's just not something I do until I saw Miss Adela Garcia do it. And I'm thinking, what? When did you learn how to do handstands? Last year? I'm like, what? Okay, I'm joining that club. So then I hired a handstand coach, Steve Atlas, who was actually also from Spokane, Washington, right up at the Gold's
lots
Gym.
of Spokane plugs.
Yes.
Okay.
And I hired him, and I would drive all the way from Seattle here. I'd pay him $200 an hour to teach me how to do handstand, basically hand balancing.
Yeah.
And so I studied as a student for over a year. And so that failure was in that year's time frame when I was learning a new skill, and I wasn't secure about it because half the time I wasn't hitting it. The problem and the failure is when I went out there, I was carrying that with me.
Sure.
Instead of saying
Mentally.
50% of the time I don't hit this move, the other 50% I do, I could have walked out there, but that 50% that I do, that's what's about to happen right now, but that's not what I did. And I failed in front of everybody, and it was humiliating. And so I just remember recognizing at that point how connected we are to the mindset and performance.
But then to inspire yourself and to push yourself to never wanting to feel like that again.
Right.
Never wanting to think like that
But again, failure is feedback.
100%.
So it was feedback, right?
And so it made you stronger to go out there and hit it the second time. And it's interesting that you say that because it's like kids now have, like, we would have to pay somebody, let's spend $200 on an acting coach or $200 on how to be a model. It's like YouTube is like the coolest teacher. And there are people that can talk to you. There's nothing wrong with like hiring a coach and
Right.
bringing on a specialist who can actually go it, because just like an Audible is different than a real book, right? But it's like there's so much to be learned. And if every day you're scrolling and just looking at through vicariously through other people's lives, it's like YouTube could be an educator.
Right.
Google can be an educator. And it's like there's so much information available at these kids' fingertips that you and I didn't have.
Right.
And so how amazing is it that they have that? So you give this TED Talk, you've understood now that it's a perspective and a mind change. How did you translate that into becoming a motivational speaker and speaking on executive presence? Because that's a direction that you're going.
Right.
What is it that you've learned as your career and wearing different uniforms, literally? How are you transitioning that into what you're doing now and going after a new goal and becoming a motivational speaker and getting on all those stages and continuing to make a huge impact outside of the gym, outside of the fitness industry, and into the world?
Right. Wow. So I think that experience is a great teacher. And so you were talking about, okay, I've had the military experience and then the fitness experience. Now I'm, moving into a newer category. How am I leveraging that experience, especially what I've learned through failure? So when I think of failure, every time you try something new, I would almost say you're not human if you don't experience some level of anxiety or self-doubt, like that's natural. It means that it matters. It means
I like
that
how you did the whole navigating
it
right
means
here.
that
I love
it matters, that you care, right?
Yeah.
And so where I will experience that, for example, let's say there's the pitching process. And it's a very important process because this is how you get work as a professional, right? Like you can call yourself a speaker, and I believe it's important to step into that identity first. But let's say 5 years go by and you're like, I'm a speaker, but I just haven't talked to anybody in 5 years. Or I've talked to people, but I just haven't gotten paid for it. So then it's not a business yet, right? And so there's going to be those fears of everything from rejection. What if they say no? And you're always talking on this podcast about, well, how do you navigate that no? And, whether or not when you did do the pitch, it didn't go well. So now is that a failure? So part of what I've taken with me, we talked about it a second ago, that it's feedback and redirection. And so, I want to tell this story because this is probably one of the best memories I have with Redirection. And it kind of goes back to when I was competing and I was sponsored. I'll be classy, I won't say the company name, but I was a sponsored athlete with the supplement company. And I remember being their most recognized and most highly achieved athlete on their team roster. but they weren't using my image modeling in any of their ads. They were using blondes, blue eyes, super busty. I'm not busty, right? And I would go to them and the marketing department, and I would say, hey, so-and-so, like, are you guys going to, put me in an ad? You want to use me for a photo shoot? And I felt like they were giving me different excuses like, oh, we just haven't been able to bring you down to LA. And I'm thinking, I live in Seattle. It's not that hard. You just flew out so-and-so from Texas. So when I talk about redirection, for a while, I saw that whole experience as a failure and as rejection. I'm sponsored with this company. They must see some value in me, but not enough value to put me in their print material. Right. And so part of what I learned is that, what if my look was not the look that they decided they needed for their campaign? Who am I to say? Because you're a model, right? So that was one of the things I learned. So I look at that as, okay, so that experience gave me the feedback that maybe my look was not aligned for what they were trying to accomplish.
Yep, 100%.
But then I also decided as Redirection that I don't want to stay aligned with a company that also can't use my image, that doesn't align with my image. And so I left. And it was a huge deal because at that time, I think I was making $5,000 a month in my endorsement contract, and people didn't walk away from things like that. But I did. And when people say, why did you leave such and such? I would say I just didn't feel valued there. And I would rather be sponsorless and just build relationships with multiple companies or just do my own thing than be anywhere where I don't feel value. And that was the redirection. So that no that they kept giving me indirectly, no, we're not going to use you in the ads, led to the redirection of, I'm not supposed to be with you guys anymore. So thank you for your time, and I'm going to go in a different direction. Right. And I continued to be published on the cover of Muscle and Fitness Hers. I was in the Flex swimsuit issue. And I remember when they called me.
Because her buys, if you're not looking, are bigger than mine right now.
Well, the funny thing about Flex swimsuit is they call me and they're like, we want to use you in your swimsuit issue. And the first thing I say is, I don't have boobs, right? They're like, beauty, and they said it. They're like, beauty comes in all shapes, forms, and we want to showcase it all. And I love that. And
that spoke to you.
Yes.
That made you feel like you belonged and you were valuable.
Yes, because at the time, I had huge insecurities about my breasts. Because
everybody does. I don't mean the breast, but it's like everybody has insecurities.
And especially in a physical industry like that.
100%.
Right?
So how did it's interesting, like you were talking about pitching and trying to pitch yourself, and it's like any market, any industry that you get in, you're going to suck at something at first. And how do you take that rejection? How do you accept it? And how do you redirect it? And what do you do with that? And it's like trying to book events and trying to get those events on. I also try to get guests on.
Yes.
And it's like trying to constantly reach out to people and say, hey, I would love to have you on as a guest. And I reached out to you, and you had mentioned this because I have been trying for over a year to get you on.
Gosh.
And we had a 15-minute pre-event call, and it turned into an hour conversation. And it was like, you informed me that the reason that you finally wanted to come on is because I didn't quit.
Right.
I kept asking.
I have so much respect. I have so much respect and admiration for perseverance. So first of all, and here's the thing, this is why we can't be taking things personally, because when you reached out, I was always interested. The timing just wasn't right. And you were, I think, reaching out on a platform that I wasn't using very much, whether it was Facebook or LinkedIn. That means I may have been on there every 2 weeks, right? Instagram, you may have had a little bit more luck. And so you reached out and you kept reaching out and you kept reaching out and you kept reaching out. And eventually, I not only admired that perseverance and that persistence, but I thought, not only do I respect that, but you know what? I'm now starting to feel rude. So the interest was there. I respected the persistence, and you made me feel valued. I don't necessarily feel valued just because somebody reaches out to me one time. But when you say, you know what, I've been reaching out to Tanji 4 times, but you know what, she's worth it, I'm going to try again. The value, it translates, and I felt that. I want you to know it was received. So eventually, not only did I say yes, but I'm like, we got to pick a date, and I want to do it in person. I don't want to do it on, there's nothing wrong
virtual,
with that.
right.
But let's wait until I'm in Spokane because I do want to do it in person. I owe you that. I want to be there with you in person. And what was beautiful is I got an opportunity to listen to you speak today and pour into a group where you were teaching about relationship building and how to add value. And I almost stood up to tell this story, but, not only were you an acquaintance, someone I've known for over 15 years that, good mutual respect, positive vibes, didn't know you too well, right? And then we had one conversation a week ago where we were supposed to talk about preparing for the podcast, but really you chose, once we got the conversation started, because we're talking about speaking and what that life looks like for us, and you poured into me for 40 minutes. So you went from fond acquaintance to Blue is my friend, like we're going to be collaborating, like I'm on your confidence team. You elevated that with one conversation, and I just think that's really powerful. And so when we go back and we get in our heads and we think about the no, I always like to say, well, how many no's did you get from the same person or organization? And then if it's once, because, I also have a large affiliate sales team because my husband and I are partnered with the Bioactive Precision Peptide Company. So I have these affiliates that get really discouraged. Like, I reached out and nobody wrote me back. And I was like, oh, how many times? 7? They're like, no, once. I'm like, what? Yeah. You're just getting started.
It's a numbers game. It really is, right? Because it's just not, your no is not a yes yet, right? And it's like, you've just got to keep knocking on the doors.
Well, you have to keep redirecting because what you're thinking the no is, it probably is not even that. It's probably not even personal, right?
Yeah, well, and that is something I learned in the modeling industry. It's like, it's not because I have a lazy eye or something. It's like, it's what they thought would best meet their market, right? And it's not me. And so they could choose somebody that reminds me of their brother, or somebody who chooses or reminds me of their brother and they hate their brother. So it's like, you have no clue. And so just to keep going and stay persistent. And I love it. And I from the bottom of my heart, I'm glad that you came on, because I'm glad that I'm on your confidence team, because I've looked up to you for so long, seriously. And we do have a lot of friends together, and it's just like, it's amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to continue building your speaking career, and I want to be a part of that for sure, and I want to help you. Where can people find out more about you and what you're doing and how to connect with you?
Well, right now, my speaker website would be a great start. Tanji, Tanji, speaks.com. So that's easy to remember. The name 100%. Is unique. Speaks, tanjispeaks.com. I primarily live on Instagram, and that handle is official, because so many people are trying to be me right now. I'm just totally kidding. But it is official Tanji Johnson. And then LinkedIn under Tanji Johnson Bridgman, which is where I'm trying to transition more of my time and energy because of my new audience.
Well, I love that. And I love what you're doing and where you're going to go, because I know you're going to succeed at that.
Thank you.
If you were to tell the audience one thing, and you wanted somebody listening to your story today, what is that one thing that you would want them to take away from what we talked about today?
Okay. Well, I would say, when you think of everyone, we all have goals. We have different things that we want to accomplish. But I feel like there's a common theme that people will struggle with if they don't protect it, and that's identity. And we touched on that a little bit before, but when you think of, for example, with the fear of failure, one of the reasons why people fear failure is because they connect it to their identity. So they end up feeling shame versus disappointment. And so they don't have a healthy relationship with failure, so it holds them back. It keeps them from taking risks. When I was talking about like, I had this great Air Force career, and then boom, I took a risk and I saw an opportunity and I ran for it, and I was rewarded for it. Because I was bold and courageous, but because I was already developing a healthy relationship with failure. So when I go back to identity, I would encourage people to take the time and take themselves through the self-reflection needed to be crystal clear on what their beliefs are, their strengths, their values, because that part of their identity is anchored, but then the rest of it can evolve. And then this is where the power is. So let's say I get a no. And I say to myself, I'm a failure. That's an identity thing, right? But we can shift from that. I can say, whoa. Failure is an event, not my identity. So yes, I screwed that up. And I'm going to take feedback, learn from it, maybe redirect. I failed, but I'm not a failure. See, now I can be disappointed
Yes.
because my identity and self-worth stay intact. And I really believe that if people can protect their identity and their worth, they will go out there and keep kicking butt and taking chances and really live in alignment with their potential.
Well, and nobody gets where they are without those failures.
That's right.
And you're just, I don't care what industry you're in. It's like taking those chances. And you could have failed. You could have failed. You took that chance and you were rewarded for it. But even if you hadn't passed it, even if you hadn't succeeded at it, I have a feeling based off of your entire life experience, you would have just taken it, accepted it, and redirected, right? And taken it as feedback because that's who you are. And I am so honored that you're on here with me today, that our relationship has taken off, and I'm so excited to have met your family, and I love you, and thank you for being a part of this.
I love you too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Blue.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to Navigating No. If this episode brings you value or you know someone who could benefit from it, the best way to support the show is by sharing and subscribing. It's completely free and helps us reach more people. And if you have any questions, feedback, or guests you'd like me to interview, drop a comment while you're there. I'd love to hear from you. And most importantly, thank you for tuning in. And let's continue sharing optimism and positivity.